Hi, I'm Jen. Thanks so much for checking out my channel, Your Best Work Life. Here we talk about all things that have to do with writing the perfect resume, preparing you for an interview, and furthering your career goals. Today we're going to talk about 7 common interview mistakes. These are 7 things that you should absolutely never do when it comes to the interview process if you really want to give yourself the best shot of getting the job. Let's jump into it. Number 1, being late. Do not be late. Let me say that again. Do not be late for an interview. This is probably one of the most common ways that people get disqualified from being considered for a job opportunity. And it's such a basic thing that a lot of us really don't put enough value into. When I think about someone being late to an interview or to a meeting, I really think that's a huge sign of disrespect. Whoever you're going to be meeting with, it shows that you don't value their time, and it really shows that you don't have much self-respect for your time either. There's really not many excuses that you can use to be late anymore. We all have GPS, we've all got our smartphones, we know exactly how long it's going to take to get somewhere. There's so many different traffic apps. You really can't use traffic as an excuse. You should be prepared. You should have an idea in advance how long it's going to take you to get to your interview, so you have no excuse for being. You want to make a great first impression, and that is incredibly hard to do if you show up late. My dad used to always tell me growing up that if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, don't bother showing up. So I think that's a great rule of thumb to keep in mind when you're approaching an interview or when you're thinking about any kind of professional meeting. Be on time. Being late is disrespectful, and it's incredibly hard to come back from when you're talking about making a first impression. Number 2, not knowing who you're meeting with. This is really big as well. In most cases, if you're going in for an interview, you should know who you're meeting with. And if they didn't tell you, then make sure you ask. They're not going to withhold that information if you come out and ask for it. But many companies don't necessarily think it's critical to articulate who all you're going to be meeting with unless you specifically ask for it. So you want to know, what are the names of the people that you're going to be meeting with? What are their titles? And from there, you want to take that information and do a little bit of research in advance. Look them up on LinkedIn. I mentioned LinkedIn in some of my other videos. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, absolutely get one. It is a great professional networking site and a great way to do research to prepare for an interview on a company, but also on specific individuals. You can see their career background, their educational history, how long they've been with the company, and you want to have a little bit of that information and be armed with that going into your interview. Because if you can ask a specific question or bring something up that you learned from looking at their LinkedIn profile that they hadn't necessarily shared with you, it is going to show them that you have done your research, you've done your due diligence, and that you are really prepared and you really care about this opportunity. So make sure you know who you're meeting with in advance so you have that opportunity to do some research and you can better prepare yourself for that interview. Number 3, being inappropriately or underdressed. This is huge. Again, if you're going in for an interview, it is perfectly okay to ask, what is the dress code? What is the typical attire on a day-to-day basis? Perfectly okay to ask. And when you're going in for an interview, I always recommend dressing up just a notch above whatever the dress code is. So if it's a casual environment, then maybe you want to dress business casual. If it's a business casual environment, then maybe you should dress business professional and throw on a suit and tie. So you always want to dress to impress, make a great first impression, but you never want to be underdressed. So really make sure you're dressed to impress, you feel good, you have confidence, shoulders back. It's really going to set you up to be as successful as possible throughout that interview. Number 4, not asking questions. This is another thing that I see so often, and it really boggles my mind. Yes, the interview is about the company trying to find the right person for the job. But at the same time, that interview is about you finding out if that company or that job is right for you as well. It really does go both ways. And I don't think a lot of people really think about that when they're going into an interview. So you really need to take some time to think about, what do you care about most? What's most important to you? What's going to motivate you to actually make a career change? What are those things that you care about day to day? What's most important? Is it growth opportunity? Is it the tools or technologies you're going to have exposure to? Is it the company culture? Is it all about money for you? Really think about those things so that you can craft questions in advance, and I highly recommend that you write them down. Don't just think about them in your head, because when you get into the interview, you might get a little nervous. You might forget about certain things that were really important just because you're caught up in the moment and just trying to make a good impression. We're not always thinking as clearly or as thoroughly as we maybe should be. So write down all of those questions in advance. And when it comes time for them to turn it over to you, many times towards the end of the interview, a hiring manager will ask, or an interviewer will ask, do you have any questions for me? Make sure you have questions. Even if they have answered a lot of your questions throughout the course of the interview, there's always something you can ask, and you always need to ask a question. If you don't have any questions to ask, the perception is going to be that you don't really care, or you haven't really put much thought into actually seeing yourself in that job or with that company. So even if it's something like, if they truly, let's say for example, they've really answered all of your kind of day-to-day questions and what it's going to be like throughout the course of the interview, you can always ask that person, what keeps you here? What gets you excited to come to work every day? So there's always some additional questions you can ask, and make sure you're prepared to do that throughout the interview. Number 5, speaking negatively about a former employer. This is absolutely a no-no. And the biggest reason why is because it's going to bring just negativity to that interview, to that conversation, negative energy to that room. You don't want it. And if you are immediately defaulting to speaking negatively about your former boss, the company, whatever it might be, that person who's interviewing you is going to probably think that you're just going to do the exact same thing about them or their company. And that really doesn't help anybody. So it's okay to talk about a previous job and say, it really wasn't a great fit, or just wasn't the right culture fit for me, or, I didn't quite see eye to eye with my manager. That's okay, but make sure you try to bring some positives into it. So if you're talking about a company where it wasn't a great culture fit, maybe include some things that you learned. Say, I left this company because I just didn't feel that it was going to be the right fit for me in terms of culture at the end of the day, but I learned some great skills. I'm really excited for what I took away from this opportunity and how I can apply that to my next job, but I'm really hoping to find a company where the culture really better fits what I'm looking for and what's going to make me feel fulfilled on a daily basis. So really keep that in mind. No negative talk about previous companies or previous managers. Number 6, lying about your experience. Do not do it. I know it can be tempting to kind of fudge a little bit or to exaggerate some of the experience that you have, but this is never a good idea. One of two things is either going to happen. Either they're going to know that you're lying in the interview because you're not giving the right answer, and you're immediately going to be disqualified from that opportunity. Now you're going to be perceived as someone who's not ethical and who's really just trying to say what they want to hear. They're not going to consider you for that. That's absolutely what people want to avoid. So that's the first thing that might happen. You might just get called out and immediately disqualified. Let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say you're able to fudge your way through it. They end up hiring you and you get into that job. And now you're not able to deliver on what you said, or you don't really have the knowledge and the experience that you said you had. And now you're struggling. Now you're starting off from behind, and that's probably not going to bode well for you or for the company. That's a waste of your time. That's a waste of their time. That's a waste of money, energy, where you could have been spent looking for a job that really is going to be a good fit for you. So I know it can be tempting, but please be truthful. Be honest about your experience. Most employers are willing to consider people without all of the skills. They really care in most cases more and more about culture fit, about soft skills, and about transferable skills and the ability to learn and to execute in that job that you're interested in or applying for. So don't feel the need to lie. Be truthful. It's going to lead to a better work life for you in the long run. So keep that in mind. Number 7, not sending a thank you note. Sending a thank you note is such a great thing for so many reasons. Number 1, it shows your true interest, that you really do care, you are sincerely engaged and want to be considered for that opportunity. But number 2, it also allows you the opportunity to address any concerns or additional questions that there might be about whether or not you're a good fit for the role. Certainly throughout the interview, there might be questions that maybe you didn't know how to answer, or you kind of fumbled your way through the answer. A thank you note is a great opportunity to address that. And, first and foremost, thank them for their time, thank them for considering you for the opportunity, express why you're interested, what got you excited, and then maybe share a couple of things that you took away from the interview. Whether it be things that really made you feel like you would be a great fit for the opportunity, and maybe some things that, hey, we talked about XYZ in the interview, and I wasn't quite sure how I would approach it, but after thinking about it, blah, 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 blah. So whatever that might be. But that might give you an opportunity to address any concerns or address any questions that you weren't as comfortable answering in the interview. Again, to show them that you've given it some thought, that you're serious, that you're professional, and that you are the right person for the job. So let's quickly recap on the 7 common interview mistakes that you absolutely want to avoid at all costs. Number 1, being late. Don't do it. Horrible first impression, really bad to come back from. Be on time. And ideally you want to be early. You want to be at least 10 to 15 minutes early for an interview. That way you have time to get settled, you're not frazzled, you've got yourself together, and you're making a good first impression. Number 2, not knowing who you're meeting with. Make sure you know the names and ideally the titles of each individual you'll be meeting before you go into an interview, so you can do your research, you can take a quick look at their LinkedIn profiles, and you can be prepared to ask specific questions or speak to things that will resonate with each of them. Number 3, being inappropriately or underdressed. Make sure you know the dress code, make sure you're dressed to impress. Make a great first impression. Number 4, not asking questions. Make sure you go into every single interview with a list of questions written down that you're ready to ask whenever is appropriate throughout that interview. But always have questions to ask. Number 5, speaking negatively about a former employer. Just don't do it. Keep it positive. You want to bring the right energy to your interview. Number 6, lying about experience. Don't do it. Be truthful. Be honest about what you bring to the table. Again, focus on those transferable skills. You don't need to have every single thing in the job description to be considered for the job. Be confident in what skills you have and articulate that throughout the interview process. And number 7, not sending a thank you note. Make sure to send a thank you note every single time after a phone interview, after an in-person interview, to every person that you've interacted or met with. Send that thank you note. Show that you're interested, show your professionalism, show your excellent written communication skills, and address any concerns that they may have regarding your experience and how you might be a fit for that role. Again, I'm Jen. Thanks so much for checking out my channel, Your Best Work Life. If this video was helpful for you, please like and comment below and subscribe to my channel so you see all of my newest videos. If there's something specific that you need or that you have questions about, drop in the comments. I will absolutely get back to you. I'm here to help you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.